I apologize for my appearance. I probably haven't shaved in at least 2 or 3 weeks. We're in the middle of winter. You wouldn't be able to tell by looking out the window, but it's very cold, which is why I'm not filming this in my car. I was reading chapters 32 through 36 of Genesis yesterday, um, and some things really stood out. I don't have time to cover all of them, but there was one specific thing that just really kind of it grabbed me, and it reminded me of something I said in a previous video where I confessed that one of my favorite characters in the Bible is Jacob. Jacob is he's an amazing character. He really suffered and endured a lot in his life, so much more than I think a lot of believers actually realize. I made a chart a long time ago of all the things he suffered and endured, which maybe one day I'll try to go through at length. But I have a feeling I'm going to touch on some of those things in this video. But the thing that triggered me was something I read in. So let's set the stage. So, as many of you already know, the story of Jacob, he and his brother Esau, they've grown to a certain age, and it's probably getting close to the time where their father Isaac is going to bestow the blessing on the older brother. What's kind of tragic is that the church has been taught a narrative over probably centuries. They've just repeatedly heard over and over and over again that Jacob stole the blessing. Well, no, not really, because there's an incident where Esau comes in from a day of hunting. I think it was a day of hunting. And he's so exhausted, he tells his brother Jacob to give him a bowl of stew. And Jacob says, "Sell me your birthright." And Esau is kind of like, well, what good is the birthright to me? I want some food right now. So Esau agrees to sell his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew. And then the day comes where Isaac is going to bestow the blessing to the firstborn. I think that Jacob and his mother were concerned that Isaac might still give the blessing to Esau. So there was this deception set up, and it guaranteed that Isaac bestowed the blessing onto Jacob. Well, of course, Esau was furious, and he conveniently forgot that he had sold his birthright to Jacob earlier. Minor detail. And Esau basically threatens to kill Jacob. He says, I'll wait till my father dies. And they thought Isaac wasn't going to be around much longer. Well, their mother finds out, says something to Jacob, and he flees. He basically goes and he lives with his uncle for the next 20 years. Well, at some point, at the end of the 20 years, after he's married, he's got livestock, he's got servants, God says, return to your homeland. And God says, I will deal well with you. And Jacob acknowledges this. They've done this hundreds of miles journey from Padan Aram. They're getting close to the land of his birth, and he knows he's going to have to confront Esau at some point. So Jacob has his encounter with Esau. Esau shows up with 400 men. Clearly, Esau was not happy with Jacob. He was probably still angry about the whole birthright situation. Now, on the surface, it appears there was a reconciliation, lots of hugs and kisses on the cheek and tears shed and everything, lots of kind words said. But if you look at it, why did Esau bring them in? And then why did Esau insist on leaving a garrison with his brother when the brother was kind of like resistant of going with him to Mount Seir? Esau didn't trust Jacob. He was still angry. And I think that the way we look at it, if he had truly forgiven Jacob, Esau would have conveyed this forgiveness to his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. And I think that that would have impacted his lineage. But what do we see? The subsequent centuries, the Edomite nation that came out of Esau was constantly at war with Israel. So there was clearly a lot of antagonism, a lot of bitterness. So I don't think that Esau actually forgave Jacob. I think that that whole thing with the crying and the tears, I think part of it was for show. Maybe on some level there was some initial real feelings, but it quickly subsided and disappeared. So what happens? Jacob is terrified that Esau is going to lure them to Mount Seir and possibly kill him and his sons, and then take all the livestock, take the wives, take the servants. So Jacob basically lies to Esau and says, we'll follow you. We're just very slow right now. And the moment Esau and his 400 men are out of the picture, they're like, okay, we're going in this direction. So they head west instead of south. They go to Succoth, across the Jordan, and then they settle in Shechem. And those of you who already know where this is going, there's the incident where his daughter, Dinah, gets sexually assaulted. Then the brothers Simeon and Levi are so angry the way their sister has been treated that they deceive the tribe of Shechem into getting circumcised. And because of the physical pain that they're in, they can't fight back. Simeon and Levi go in and slaughter the entire camp because of what they did to their sister. Jacob's response is he's horrified. He basically says to his sons, "You have now made me a stench in the nostrils of the people of the land. They will now probably attack us." So now, not only does Jacob have to worry about Esau and his men coming back to finish the job, he now has to worry about everyone living in the land of Canaan hearing what Jacob's sons had done to this tribe. Who knows? Maybe they'll organize and attack Jacob and his family and kill them. So Jacob has this hanging over his head now. Then during their journeys, Rachel, his wife, the wife that he served his uncle for years in order to have the right to marry, the woman he loves more than anyone else, she's giving birth to their final son. And what happens? She dies in childbirth. So now he's lost his wife. Then it just goes from bad to worse. Joseph's brothers grow to despise him because of apparent favoritism from his father Jacob and because of various dreams that he's been having. So they basically plan to murder him. One of the brothers, Reuben, convinces them not to murder him. Instead, he is sold into slavery. So after the brothers sell Joseph into slavery, they go back to their father and they lie to Jacob and say, he was torn apart by a wild animal, and they give him part of his tunic covered in the blood of another animal as confirmation that Joseph's been killed. Jacob is inconsolable. He is devastated. All he does is mourn for the next 22 years. All he does is mourn, thinking that his son has been torn apart by a wild animal, not realizing that his son is actually in Egypt. He must have mourned constantly. He lost his wife. He's now lost his first son to that wife. And even though you know where the story is going, God still allowed Jacob to believe a lie for over 20 years. A lie that tormented him. To think that your child has been savagely torn apart by animals. I can't imagine what that would have done to him for over 20 years. So Jacob is now living in this situation where he's surrounded by his enemies, waiting at any moment for them to possibly attack and destroy his family. Then there was the situation with his daughter Dinah. Then he loses his wife. Now he's been told that his son, the son that he loved more than all the others, has been savagely torn apart. And what happens next? A famine. A famine hits. The famine is so bad, he has to send his sons down to Egypt in order to get grain so the family doesn't starve to death. So here's something to think about. He'd come from years of working for his uncle with massive amounts of livestock. Why weren't they eating the livestock? Why would they have been starving? If there's a famine in the land, I have to wonder if maybe most of the livestock had died off. So now Jacob is seeing everything he owns, all of his wealth, disappearing. And to see those animals probably dying of thirst or dying of hunger, just one by one, losing everything he had, that must have been devastating. And then the final insult. You know the story. His sons go down to Egypt in order to get grain. Jacob is no longer a slave, but has now been elevated to be the second most powerful person in Egypt. The brothers arrive to buy grain, and they don't recognize him, but he recognizes them. And he plays a bit of a trick on them because he wants to see his younger brother, Benjamin. Benjamin had remained back in Canaan with his father Jacob. Joseph accuses the brothers of being spies and says he won't believe their story of where they're from unless they go back to Canaan and return with this unseen brother that they have spoken of. And to guarantee they'd bring Benjamin back with them to Egypt, he held one of the brothers in prison until they returned with Benjamin. Benjamin was the other son of Rachel. This was the son who Rachel was having when she died. I can only imagine how protective Jacob must have been of Benjamin. And for his sons to come back and say, we have to take Benjamin with us to Egypt, must have absolutely devastated him for fear that he was now going to lose Benjamin as well as Joseph. Jacob would have been at his wit's end. So why am I sharing all of this? God had told Jacob, return to the land of your birth, and I will deal well with you. I will deal well with you. What did Jacob experience? Loss after loss, after heartache after heartache. Is this the fulfillment of God's promise? Yes. God allowed Jacob. I would argue he even orchestrated a few of the situations. God, at the very least, allowed Jacob to go through all these struggles and traumas and heartaches and disappointments because they served a greater purpose in Jacob's life. When God promises that he is going to do well in our lives, it's not necessarily going to unfold the way we expect it to. There may be tremendous heartache, tremendous suffering involved, and yet God is still in the midst of it. God is still with us, working out his eternal purposes. For those of you out there who are really, really suffering and struggling, and everything seems to be going wrong, God is with you. God is dealing well with you, even if everything around you appears to go against that promise. You know, I don't know what God is doing in my life, but I have to believe that everything that has happened and will happen is for good, that it has a redemptive aspect, even if it doesn't feel like it. And I still can't get over the fact that God, you know, in all of Jacob's sufferings, God allowed Jacob to believe a horrible, horrible lie for over 20 years that tormented him. Now, we know eventually that the deception was exposed. When he found out that Joseph was now ruling in Egypt, the other brothers would have had to admit, yeah, Dad, we kind of lied to you. That's a whole other stress I can only imagine Jacob going through. If you are seeking the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I promise you, God is working in your life, no matter how bad it looks.